So what happens with the sanitation? Can you trust our food when it's being processed and put into the store shelves?
99.9% of the time, yes you can. But you've got to watch the little indicators.
Okay.
For example, if you get one of those jars of pasta sauce, when you take the lid off, the button doesn't pop up, take it out to the store. Don't think, oh well, it might be okay, because it might be, but there again, it might not be. So mostly the food that is processed in Canada is extremely safe. It's amongst the safest in the world, but with the way in which we have become removed from our food source, there's more risk the further away you are from where the food is produced, obviously. But there are processes which one can use which actually control the hazards along that route to reduce the risk. So in many ways, the modern sort of Canadian food production system produces safer food in the kitchen than almost any other way of doing it. But still, in North America, 1 in 3 people will get some form of food poisoning every year. And that's mostly down to hygiene habits in the individual's own kitchen. And actually how they prepare the food, how they store the food, whether or not they wash their hands. That's actually the biggest danger if you want to avoid food poisoning. That doesn't mean to say things don't occasionally happen. If you remember a couple of years ago, there was a big problem with E. coli turning up in organic spinach, which turned out to be, it came from flood water, which had flooded the field with the organic spinach in, and the flood water had come from a river where wild animals used it as a sort of a water source. And the wild animal had E. coli in their feces, and that therefore got into the spinach, and once it's inside the spinach, you can't wash it off. The only thing you do with it is cook it, if you want to get rid of it. So if you have a piece of salad that doesn't look too good, stick it on top of, stick in some boiling water and just boil it for a couple of minutes, and that will kill anything in it. And I think that more food poisoning is caused by fruits and vegetables than is ever caused by meat. So your meat is safe, particularly the stuff that's actually produced here.
So the next question would be, how do you know, like, if your meat, because like vegetables are pretty standard. If it's firm or not, you can kind of tell if it's good, like juicy or not. But how do you know if you have a good piece of meat when you're cooking it?
Well, I mean, the first thing is your nose is a very sensitive analytical instrument, and a really rotten piece of meat you can actually smell. But the important thing with meat, particularly things like sort of, well, pork fillet this was, and steak, is to make sure that the outside of the meat is properly cooked. Most meat that is actually produced, and you go and buy a chunk of steak, or you buy a lamb chop, or a piece of pork fillet, or whatever it is, there may well be on the surface of that some pathogenic bacteria that you don't want, which is why you have to cook it on the outside very carefully. Inside in the meat, with the exception of chicken and turkeys, then there's actually very little contamination, which is why even with beef you can cook it rare. Same thing with lamb. In Manitoba at least you can cook pork, so it's actually slightly pink in the middle because of the way in which the pigs are produced. They're produced in effectively a disease-free environment. Whereas if you try to eat wild boar, you can end up with some very nasty parasitic diseases if you cook it all the way through. The thing to watch out for, though, is something like a beef burger. Because if you think about it, with a beef burger, you turn the outside onto the inside of the meat as you minced it. So that has the potential for having things like E. coli all the way through the burger, which is why it must be cooked thoroughly all the way through. So just a few simple rules like that help you, as it were, with the sort of the food safety issue. If in doubt, the answer is cook it.
Very good rule.
Particularly if you're travelling in parts of the world where maybe food hygiene is not so well advanced. If you want to find out more about this where your food comes from, then why don't you pay a visit to a facility we've been building down at our Glenlee farm, the Bruce D. Campbell Farm and Food Discovery Centre, because the purpose of that is to actually tell the story of what it takes to go from the soil to the supper plate and everything in between.
Well, thanks for having us over, Mr. Dean, and I think that we're going to go check out the Farm Food Discovery Centre.
Absolutely.
Great stuff. Well, thank you for coming by, and hope you enjoyed the lunch.
Yeah,
Very
it
good.
was fantastic.
Okay. Well, I'll see you down at the centre maybe.
Alright. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.